Well, as we begin, one more round of applause for Speaker Pelosi. Well, this is my favorite Georgetown tradition. About 10 years ago, we started the tradition of having really an iconic figure, somebody who has made a profound difference in politics and the law, talk to the first-year class. And we've had Justice Kagan, we had Justice Breyer, we had Justice Scalia, we had our own Doug Emhoff. But the person who appeared year after year was Justice Ginsburg. And Justice Ginsburg, her husband was on our faculty, and she really cared so profoundly for this community. So every year, whenever we invited her, she would come. And we decided to name this lecture series in her honor. So the first year, she spoke. And then the second year, she got President and Secretary of State Clinton. So we're trying to think, how do we keep up with this incredible tradition? And we figured it out. Round of applause for Speaker Pelosi. So she doesn't really need an introduction, but I'm going to give one anyway. 52nd Speaker of the House of Representatives. She made history in 2007 when she was the first woman elected to serve as Speaker. And then she made history again in 2009 when she regained the speakership, the first person to do that in 6 decades. As Speaker, she led the passage of really transformative legislation, including the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act in 2009, the Affordable Care Act, which she was the architect, and the first ever comprehensive energy legislation to fight the climate crisis. And she's currently serving as a representative for California's 11th Congressional District, where she's fighting to lower costs, grow paychecks, and create jobs. So in addition to being the architect of generation-defining legislation and a defender of democracy in home and abroad, she's also a very good friend to Georgetown. Received an honorary doctorate in 2002. Your husband, Paul, is a member of the SFS class of 62, and he serves on the board of advisors for SFS and was chair. And in 2019, the university established the Paul Pelosi Public Service Award. And you're a parent. So 3 of your 5 children attended Georgetown, and your son, Paul Jr., graduated in 1995. So an iconic figure, a member of this community, and also this is a very important moment physically in the history of the law school. This is the Hart Auditorium, which was named after Senator Philip Hart. And we spent a year and a half redoing it. And this is the first event, very appropriately, that we're holding in the Hart Auditorium. So again, could not be more perfect, and a round of applause for the speaker. So we have questions from our first-year students, but before that, I just want to ask, so you knew Justice Ginsburg?
I did. I'm here with my family here today is Rita Meyer, my college roommate from Trinity College. That was such a while ago that Georgetown did not accept women in those days. And we had a friendship forever. And on that time, she met her husband, Dennis Meyer, who was a Georgetown law student, graduate student. And he was true to the Georgetown law for his whole life. Really, it is an honor to be here with all of you. I'm looking for my grandson, Liam, but I don't see him quite yet. He was a graduate of Georgetown, too. We had 3 generations. But to be able to speak to you under the auspices, the title of Ruth Bader Ginsburg is an honor indeed. Speaking personally, I was sharing some stories with the Dean. And Dean, thank you for your tremendous leadership of the university. You have been so wonderful, and we're all so proud of you.
Thank you.
And Alice. I was telling you a couple stories just to establish our creds as far as Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Well, Rita was Ruth Bader Ginsburg for Halloween, but that doesn't really count. She won the prize. She won the prize. But everybody wanted to be associated with, or wants to be associated with her. I was telling that one time, it had to be more than 15 years ago, she said to me at an event, she came over to me and she pulled me over and she said, because we love each other and because we're such good friends, I'm going to tell you something very personal. I don't want you to be afraid, but it is that I have cancer. But I'm going to beat it. I'm going to don't worry about it. I'm going to beat it. It's going to be okay. And I'm like, well, I'll be prayerful. I won't be fearful, but I'm glad you have all this confidence. And she did beat it at that time. Sometime after that, I was on a plane. I get on a plane and there she is, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Since we love each other so much, I go up to her and she said, "Not now." And as it turns out, happily for me, my seat was right across the aisle from her. So not now, it was okay because I would be there for the flight. And then at some point she closes up everything and she said, "I was into my book." And I wanted to finish what I was doing. And I'm going to have you read The Galleys. So again, that was an act of love. Well, it was tough love, but nonetheless, love. She loved opera, as you all know, and so we would see her enjoying the opera and the rest. And it was always a joy to see what a loving couple they were. He loved her so much. Every time we would see them together, he was so proud of her and she of him. So perhaps in the course of conversation, some more. Just it was sad for us to have her lie in state in the Capitol. I was so glad I was speaker at the time so I could make that happen. And another kind of Ruth Bader Ginsburg story that goes with her lying in state in the Capitol, our family came. It was COVID, so we couldn't have all of you there, but we had as many people as the position would allow us to have in the Capitol. And all of a sudden, when we're getting toward the end, and there's this activity going on, and we're like, oh my gosh, somebody must have fallen or gotten sick, but it was her trainer doing her exercises next to her being there. So right to the end, they had the book of her favorite exercise. So everything she did was with gusto, whether it was writing a book or doing exercises or loving her husband or just honoring her oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. So when I think of her, I think sad, and I think happy and funny stories, but perhaps some more will emerge in the course of all of this. Her own book and her protection of democracy, women's rights to choose. It's about democracy. And she was quite, as you probably know, studying her, quite definite about her views. And sometimes they weren't good news and sometimes they weren't, but they were always definite.
She was very courageous and really an extraordinary leader. And it was always a privilege for the first year students to hear her talk about her career and what she'd overcome.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite a story. But you all have your own story. And that's really what I think she would, the kinds of conversations we would share. Your story. In the history of the whole world, there's never been anybody like you. She thought that about herself. There's nobody like you, imagine, in the history of the whole world. So know your power in that, the authenticity of you, the sincerity of what you believe, what you care about. And I always say to the candidates and my members, this is a rough business we're in. It's not for the faint of heart. It's a lot of rough and tumble. You're a target. That's just the way it is. So the only way to justify it is to know your why. I know why I'm doing this. I know why I'm here. Understand why you're attracted, whether it's about democracy or whether it's about the planet, saving the planet, whether it's about a particular individual rights or education, justice in every form, justice, whether it's justice as you study it and know it's environmental justice, social justice, economic justice, whatever it happens to be. If that's your why, know your why, know what it is, have your vision, have your knowledge about what that subject is, the particular path that you want to take. Just know it. You're not going to know everything. Nobody does. There's no secret sauce, no tie, no jacket. Doesn't make any secret sauce. All due respect. No, I have to say this to women. That's not it. And your vision, your knowledge, and therefore your judgment, because you know what you're talking about. And again, you always want to be current, so you're never fully knowledgeable. You're always learning. How you want to get it done, how you think in a strategic way. That's really what it's about. What, the why, the what, the how. And then we come back to you, the strategic, knowledgeable, principled, values-based you, and what's in your heart in terms of how people see your authenticity, your sincerity about it all, and are attracted to you, whether it's a jury in the courtroom or a candidate, a voter at the polls, or whatever it happens to be. So you all need to have this education at Georgetown. What a remarkable thing. You must have great confidence in what you bring to Georgetown, what they learn from you, what Georgetown learns from you, and what you will take from here and from each other. They're all a resource to each other. So I'm in awe of you, and I'm honored to have some time to share some thoughts with you.
It's what an inspiring beginning. So you talked about your why. So let's talk about, why did you get into politics?
My why, my husband, Paul, who was a Georgetown grad, we have 5 children, 3 of them Georgetown. Our son, Paul, took it to the limit, college, JD, MBA, you know, as long as you could stay. Adorable.
We actually have an SJD if he wants to come back.
And in between, you know, abroad and all that. But anyway, here's the thing. We had these 5 children. Rita knows this story so well because she's heard me say it so many times. My why was 1 in 5 children in America goes to sleep hungry at night, lives in poverty. I just couldn't stand that. I just could not stand that. I mean, I was raised in a family where we were told public service was a noble responsibility, and we all had a responsibility to each other. It was a family that I was born in that was devoutly Catholic, proud of our Italian-American heritage, deeply patriotic, loving America, and in our case, staunchly democratic. And so the Catholic and the Democratic part, keeping separation of church and state, of course, but the values in our family went together. So I just couldn't handle the fact that 1 in 5 children gone to sleep. This is the greatest country that ever existed in the history of the world. And that injustice was my why. Got me from the kitchen to the Congress, housewife, House Speaker, but a target all the way. That was my one. Yeah.
So, and for our students who are interested in careers in public service, do you have any advice to them, what they should be doing now, what kind of first steps are?
Well, as I said, you know why, you know what, and then you're mindless children and everything, child tax credit, fairness, minimum wage, family medical, everything that goes with that. But there are so many. You can enlarge any issue to include the whole planet in terms of saving the planet, the climate crisis. That's a health issue. clean air, clean water for these children to breathe. It's a jobs issue, good, clean, green jobs, keeping America preeminent globally in the green economy. It's a defense issue, and military experts tell us that the competition for resources and habitat and all the rest will be cause for conflict unless that is addressed. So it's a security issue. But most of all, it's a values issue. If you do believe as I that this is God's creation and we have a moral responsibility to be good stewards, but even if you don't believe that, we all share the belief that we have a moral responsibility to young people, to the next generation and the rest, to keep the planet intact. So any big issue can come your way in terms of how you might see it. But again, I had no intention of running for office. But you're asking what advice? I had none. Right, Rita? To ever talk, I was rock and roll. I wasn't running roll. And then I had 5 children in 6 years and 1 week. I keep saying that to my archbishop, but anyway, he's got a problem. But anyway, I had no intention ever. And the people came to me and said, run for office. And I was like, you don't understand. I'm shy. I'm not going out there. I'm not getting into that arena. No, you have to run. You have to run. You love the issues, which I did. And so you will really, you have to run. So I go to Alexandra, who's our youngest. She did not go to Georgetown. She went to Loyola in Los Angeles,
Okay.
Loyola Marymount. She went there. She selected her college very carefully. The school that had the best radio station in the country, no matter where or what, that's where she was going, and that was Loyola Marymount. But anyway, go to Alexandra. She's going to be a senior in high school. 4 of them were in college when they're that close. They're in college at the same time. 4 of them in college. She's going to be a senior in high school. So Alexandra, mommy has been asked to run for Congress. I never thought of it. I never wanted it. It isn't something I aspire to, but they keep asking me, and the person who was asking is important to me, so I promised I would consider it. So I said, any answer is fine. I love my life, being here with your dad and with Dad and you and Mara. But if I were to do this, here's what it would be. I would be gone maybe 3 nights a week, Monday through Wednesday night, be home on Thursday, or Tuesday through Friday. That's the congressional schedule. And it's not every, some weeks we're home, but largely 3 nights a week I'll be in DC. So any answer you have is okay. She said, mother, now mommy has been asked to run for Congress. Mother, get a life. This is 35 years ago. I had never heard that expression before. I thought I had a life and all that. And what teenage girl would not want her mother out of the house 3 nights a week? You know Alexandra, how she is. She's very direct. She's a filmmaker now, and she did a film with me in my pajamas, no makeup, the whole thing. But anyway, that's her revenge of an husband. But in any event, but I was ready. I didn't seek it. I didn't really even know if I wanted it. As I said, I considered myself a shy person. Now I'm getting in the arena. But this is for you. Just be ready. Just take inventory of you. What are your strengths? What do you care about, as I say, your why? What do you know about? What do you want to do? And when the opportunity comes, you may never know when it will. Just be ready and know your power, the power of you, the only person like you ever. And the values you bring, the education you have, all of that. But just be personally ready, because you never know. It could be right around the corner. I had absolutely no intention. And then I had no intention. I loved it when I went to Congress. I totally loved working. I was in appropriations and intelligence. Loved what I was doing. Loved it. then they said, you should run for leadership. I don't want to run for leadership. You know, what? I don't even thought it. You have to run for same thing. So I said, okay, I got really tired of losing. You know, we were losing. We lost in 94, 96, 98. When 2000 was coming up, I said, you know what? I'm tired of losing for the children. Because the policy is very different. And we're not going to talk that maybe, or whatever, but it's two different schools of thought as to what the role of government is, meeting the needs of people, and we're talking about justice. And so then the word went out that I would be running, and the man said, who said she could run? Well, any hesitation I had to run completely disappeared. Who said she could run? You light my fire. So in any case, because I was tired of losing, I decided to run. She said, I know how to win elections. I'd been chair of the California Party as a volunteer, but I know how to win elections, and I showed them how I thought I could see a path to victory. And then when you win, then you become speaker. And then that whole thing about women and all the rest. When you have the gavel, it's a whole different deal. A whole different deal. But I just say to you, and the advice is, know your power. I said the other stuff of what, why, what, how, and what's in your heart. But be ready. You can do it all. There's nothing you can't do. You shape it to you. Shape it to you. With my members, I say to them, I do not divide up the work around here. I recognize the talent, and that's what we spring from. It is, what do you do best? And you have to think about what you do best and just go for it. And then you be the buddy system. I'll help you, you help me, and this and that. And of course, there's always friendships and all the rest. But it's tough. It's really awful. I said, they're in the arena now. I'll quote a Republican president, Teddy Roosevelt. Being bipartisan here. Teddy Roosevelt said, when you're in the arena, it's different. You know, you're no longer a spectator. You're in the arena. And so what I tell the members, in addition to know your power and be ready and know your why and all that, when you're in the arena, you have to be ready to take a punch. You have to be ready to throw a punch for the children. Getting back to my purpose. So know your purpose. You know your purpose, the rest of it is okay, because it's rough. I mean, I would like to say, when I went, there were 23 women, 435 people in the Congress, 23 women, 11 Republicans, 12 Democrats. What, are you kidding me? So I said, that's one thing that I said, being a party chair before, I want to help change that. Now we have 94 Democratic women who went from 12 to 94. I want more. I want to get us over 100. We got more than half. We have in our caucus, over 70% of the caucus are women, people of color, LGBTQ. That is a beautiful, remarkable, diverse caucus, representative of our country. So understand why you have to be participating, because you bring you to the table.
So now, as you may get a sense, when you look out at the first year class, 59% of our first year students are women.
No offense, gentlemen.
Do you have advice that you'd give to our female law students who are interested in leadership positions?
I'm sorry?
Do you have advice for our female law students who are interested in leadership positions?
In leadership. Yeah, thank you for that. There's nothing more wholesome for any system, whether we're talking government and politics that goes with it, we're talking the legal system, we're talking corporate world, we're talking our national security, you name it. Nothing that is not more successful, more wholesome than the increased participation of women. And no offense, gentlemen, it's not one is better than the other. You must have the diversity at the table. You just must have it. it's just better. And so to the women, you know, it's a funny thing because I think of you, Rita and I probably agree on this. We think of you as, oh my gosh, they're getting a law degree from Georgetown University. How many times I have gone to in San Francisco or in LA, in New York, you name it, and in Washington, D.C., where I'll meet with the women lawyers and they'll tell me what their challenges are. And I'm like, you have the world, you're right there. And they said, no, it's still a challenge, and it's getting better and better and better. But I mean, there were times that, but go back 10 years where they'd say, the client did not want a woman lawyer. Well, what's wrong with him? The client did not want a woman lawyer. Or my son, Paul, he has had a number of friends along the way, and they're young women who've been in law school and this or that. And when they would go to a law firm and they'd say, we want to hire you. And they said, but you have no women in your higher ranks. Well, we see you as our future and this and that, but why would I come here when you have nobody that you have recognized and you're going to convince me that I'm going to be the one? And I was so proud of them because they said, we're going to go where we have seen women recognized. Some of you have to be pioneers in certain firms or maybe start your own. But I was so proud of them when they would say that, big deal firms. I see no evidence of recognition of what women bring to the table, they would say. And I say that to a lot of the tech firms in San Francisco when they say, well, we want to attract more women. I said, well, show that you value women. Have women in your higher ranks and maybe your CEO or something like that. And then women will be convinced this is a place where they might reach their professional fulfillment or at least be a step in the way. But understand how needed you are. It is so essential. And I can speak with firsthand from the standpoint of government that nothing more wholesome than the increased participation of women. And our motto is, when women succeed, America succeeds. And that is an applause line.
So let me, we have questions that some of our students submitted.
Okay.
So let me begin with some of those questions. From Catherine Nucci. How do you think the legislative process in Congress could be improved? And for what reason do you think those improvements are important?
What's the second part? Why?
And why? Why are those improvements important?
This is going to sound very parochial. Our founders, bless their hearts, they were so fabulous. They had a beautiful Declaration of Independence. The Creator mentioned equality of all people mentioned, but it was not reflected in our Constitution until much as time went by. So over time, our freedoms expanded. Abolition of slavery, what a sinful thing. Abolition of slavery, Black men having the right to vote, and then women having the right to vote in different things. And then Roe v. Wade, where freedom of individuals was respected, expanding freedom. Marriage equality, freedom expanding, until Dobbs. Dobbs went in the opposite direction. And that is something that we have to, shall we say, address. So from the standpoint of governance, in other words, the court, well, now I'll just give you this little background. One of the problems we had across the aisle for like about 15 years, that they decided, well, when they passed what they call the Protection of Marriage Act, the guy who introduced it had been married 3 times. We don't know which of his marriages he was protecting, but nonetheless, the Protection of Marriage Act. It was terrible. I mean, it was terrible, but people vote for it because it sounds like something. I didn't, of course, but I'm from San Francisco. So in any event, some years later, like 2006, or this was in the late 90s, Bill Clinton was president, they said that they wanted to have a bill that stripped, court stripping, court stripping bill, strip the right of judicial review from our old friend, the Protection of Marriage Act. Now, why would they want to do that unless they didn't believe that it was constitutional? But to make their case, they just didn't talk about that bill. They said that Marbury versus Madison was wrongly decided. Imagine that we're dealing with this. Right? Marbury versus Madison was wrongly decided, and that there is no judicial review, and therefore the defense of marriage should not be subject to the court decision. So when it was before the Supreme Court, I think it was maybe the chief, but one of the justices, I was in the room. Now, you know, when you go there, you can't even fix your glasses because they think you're taking a picture or something. Have you sat in there? You can't do anything. You have to sit still. So it was hard for me to sit still when the justice said, do you think that the Republicans thought that the defense of marriage was constitutional when they passed it? And the person defending said some nice thing, and I was ready to jump out of my seat. Of course, he didn't think so. That's why they had the court stripping bill to strip judicial review from it. But of course, I couldn't do that because you can't do it. But nonetheless, that case was won as an expansion of freedom, and we were happy about that. But if you're getting down to a court situation where, with Dobbs, it was forget precedents and forget privacy in the Constitution, then so many of our freedoms and opportunities are subjected to. So there's a lot at stake in the debate, whether try to keep it nonpartisan, but a lot in the debate. And so what can we do to change it? Well, the more public visibility, the more that the public is aware. Lincoln said it best. He said, public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, practically nothing. So the more the public is aware of what is happening. Now, when I went back to our founders, what they did in the Constitution was to have a compromise so that they could have a Constitution. Bless their hearts, and thank heavens they did. However, I represent a district, San Francisco, in California, 40 million people, 2 senators. My colleague across the aisle represents a state that has fewer constituents than my district, 2 senators. Okay, that was the compromise to get a constitution. I don't think our founders ever could have imagined that we'd be 40 million and they'd be 350,000, but nonetheless, that there would be such a disparity. But nonetheless, there were, and that's what we protect and defend. But the Senate then put over that in order to passively have had 60 votes, which means now we're talking about serious minority rule most of the time. There's some bills that we can get with 51 votes, only some that relate to the budget. So I think that one improvement could be to get rid of this, the filibuster in the Senate. So I'm making decisions for the Senate here. That get rid of the filibuster for the Senate. Why should it be 60 votes? Also in the Senate, you know this, 99 senators are not enough. One senator is holding up 600 appointments to the Department of Defense. You can't function as an acting whatever. You have to be confirmed to have the authority to protect the American people. One senator. Now they said they have another scheme that they're going to do to try to get him, to persuade him to change his mind, but 99, that's just not right. And the public doesn't even get that. It's like, what? How can that one person be doing that? Well, they do. And most people like it that way because then they could do it themselves later. So that's for that side of the house. On our side, we did many things. When I became a speaker, what I did right away was to change how leadership was formed. We practically doubled the size of it. Say there were 6 or 7 speaker, leader, whip, chair of the caucus, vice chair of the debate. It's like 20 now. And I didn't decide what they were. I said to the members, how would you like to? They said, well, we want the freshman member to be, instead of appointed by the speaker, to be, well, I always let them elected anyway, but nonetheless, to have that official, to have people who are there just a few terms determine who would speak for them in the leadership, all different kinds of things. I established something called crescendo for that purpose, representing all of the caucuses so that they would have more of a voice. So the more voice that representatives have, I think the stronger the consensus that is built and the better the legislative process. But we have a big, unless you ask, I'm not going to go into what's going on from one side of the aisle to the next now. But this, our side, from our standpoint, representing our diversity. Now, people ask me, how did you do this with 2-vote margin, most 5-vote margin? We didn't have much of a margin. Even when we passed the Affordable Care Act, it was like 1 vote or 2 votes, depending on which phase we were voting in. And I consider myself a weaver. I'm at this loom, and you're all the threads. Every one of them precious and valuable. None of them to be disregarded, to put together this tapestry, which will be the consensus of what the legislation will look like. And respect is the word that I would use, more respect in the process. So needless to say, for somebody for 20 years was leader or speaker, I think that we did a lot of things to improve the legislative process, but you can always learn from the members. Their job title and their job description is the same thing, representative. So whether you agree with their point of view on a subject or not, it's valid because it represents their. So that's why when you put this all together, it's a beautiful thing to behold, the consensus of it all. And that's how you elect the speaker, win the vote, whatever it happens to be. And you really do try as much as possible to reach across the aisle to see. But we have major differences. If you don't have a belief in governance and you don't have a belief in science, it's really hard to find common ground. I mean, it just really is. But we want to try to get over that. And one goal I would love for you all to take from here is try to find, say, a half a dozen subjects, maybe 8, that are unifying. We have plenty of things that are not unifying, but try to just find the ones that are unifying, that can bring people together. Because in addition to supporting and defending the Constitution, we have to govern in a way that is unifying for our children, for the country, for the children. So it is, I would just say some of the things might not be, some are in the Constitution, the speaker's in the Constitution, nothing else is. I mean, Article 1, the legislative branch, take great pride in being the first branch of government. There isn't much that, just talks about the House having the power of appropriate the purse and all that stuff, but there isn't a whole lot dictated there. The Constitution could see that there could be a rogue president or a rogue official, but they could never they did not foresee that there would be a rogue president and a rogue United States Senate. They thought that there would be a check and balance on it. So I'm just giving a point of view there. I diverted from my completely objective. And so some of the things that affect what we do are a matter of interpretation of the Constitution, and to the extent that you can just How do we find our common ground? I do believe that you are a source of that. Young people thinking fresh about things, not carrying old prejudices or biases. I don't mean prejudice in a discriminating way, but particular biases. But also, I do believe that the arts are one of the paths to unity. If you all, whatever your political point of view is, if we went to see a great show, whether it's a concert or a theater presentation, whatever it is, we would laugh together, we'd cry together, we'd dance together, we'd be inspired together. We'd forget our differences for that period of time. We'd find some common ground. Well, the arts are one place, even if we're standing in front of a painting or listening to something. That's one place, but there has to be other places where, whether it's sports, you know how we are with sports. Oh my gosh, when our team is on the field, it doesn't matter about anything else. One guy came up to me at the Warriors game. Oh, I don't agree with your politics, but I love you so much. And I said, get away from me with that hat. I didn't say it quite that way, but nonetheless, you can just imagine what that hat was. But there are things. But when I ask you to come up with 6 or 8 things, I'm not talking about the arts or sports. I'm talking about, see if you can find common ground. Just see. And you would be surprised. I assure you that you can. We are in a difficult situation right now because we do not have an agreement on respecting the vote of the American people as to the outcome of an election. If that is what a democracy is about, that's a very tough area of disagreement. But you can't say, but because of that, we're not going to talk about anything else. No, we just have to move forward and try to find more common ground. So what areas could be improved? Well, I think we improved a lot on the House side. But you can, there's absolutely no question, listening to the people who are participating, listening to constituents. People want to see as much bipartisanship as possible. They want to see accountability from what is happening. And to have accountability, you have to have transparency. You have to have people see what is happening. So we need more transparency to have more accountability again and strive for more bipartisanship. And get rid of the Senate 60 vote requirement.
So, and Jacob Kopnick asks, procedurally, do you think there should be any changes made to how leadership is selected, given the growing fractures among certain political parties?
Well, in terms of the leadership, you mean the speaker?
I think so.
Yeah, but that's in the Constitution. The Constitution has that the speaker will be elected by a majority vote. So that's why it took so many votes for Kevin to get elected and then not. Now, but they put in something that I think we should get rid of, which is that one person can move to vacate the chair. And if you have that, then it's really hard. I mean, there should be a way to vacate the chair if the chair is doing things that are wrong or bad or whatever. But if you just, for example, they were going to vacate the chair when John Boehner was speaker, and because he lost the vote, and we worked so hard to defeat his position, which was to defund Planned Parenthood. Now, the Congress doesn't even fund Planned Parenthood, but they want to have a resolution that says we don't fund it. We fund Medicaid and other things that Planned Parenthood clients take advantage of, but that's a service to that person. So anyway, he lost that vote, so they were going to vacate the chair. And that was not because of any bad thing he did. He just lost a vote that they were unhappy about. So I said I would not be, now he was a speaker, so they were in the majority. I would not be averse to protecting the institution. you can't just be, not having any certainty of one day to the next because of a vote. So I said I would protect the institution. I said, I'm not protecting you. I mean, there's no love for you. I mean, I love you, but that's not the point. The point is love the institution. But then he said, they're going to do it every week. I'm out of here. He walked right out the door. Well, he didn't walk right out the door. He welcomed His Holiness the Pope to the Capitol, and the next morning he walked out the door. His timing was, wasn't it lovely, Rita, to have the Pope there? So in any case, I think, so some of this is spelled out in the Constitution, and we're trying to interpret whether the Constitution could accommodate somebody not having a majority on the floor. Like if you have 10 votes and nobody gets the majority, can a plurality do it? But that's not what the Constitution says. So some of it is there. But do we, I think that they see, Kevin gave that, Speaker McCarthy, former Speaker, gave that to his members to get their vote. If you enable me to vacate the chair with just my vote, I'll vote for you. And so it was like the incredible shrinking speakership with that. So you have to, there's a reason things are certain ways, and everything should be subjected to the scrutiny of how can we do this better, but some of it is in the Constitution.
So a number of students asked about the current state of the Supreme Court. A number of students asked about the current state of the Supreme Court and what kind of reforms would you like?
Well, first of all, they should have an ethical standard. I mean, that asking too much for the Supreme Court of the United States? Mount Olympus, elected for life, deciding what you can do with your life without having at least an ethical standard, A, and B, and part of that would be a code of ethics, which they seem to think that they are above and that nobody can do that to them. They'd have to do it to themselves, but they haven't. I'm really very disappointed in the Supreme Court, And it's not about their decisions. They're chosen by a president who has a point of view. They bring it to the court. That's the way it is. But to have no ethical standard about money and the one thing, to get back to the previous question and this question, the one thing that would make the biggest difference in the legislative process, and this is something we've been trying to do, and we can get rid of that 60 vote requirement, we can do it, is to reduce the role of big money in politics. It's poisonous. It's poisonous. And I say this is one of the biggest fundraisers in the country, but mine is small donors with the no agenda. It's not the big, dark gun money. It's not the big, dark fossil fuel industry that that's committed to fossil fuels, to the destruction of the planet and the air we breathe. The gun industry. Last night was so heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. But I keep saying to the gun groups, we want to pass legislation, but we're never going to get what we need to get. Again, we did it before. We did it under Clinton, and we did it, we renewed some of that, but then it couldn't do anything after that. Unless, do you know how much money is involved in the gun industry? I'm not talking about $5,000 from what do they call? They're lobbyists. I'm not talking about, I'm talking about big, dark money that goes into elections. It's the cost of doing business for them. If you went to one of their factories, morning, noon, and night, constantly working, selling that stuff, and why shouldn't there be background checks? Most gun owners support that. Most people in America, 80% support that, but not in the Congress. Why wouldn't we be able to do an assault weapon ban? If this were a gun, I get this little thing, I stick it on here, a little black button on here. This turns into a regular pistol, turns into an automatic weapon, killing people so fast. a market opportunity for the industry. So I do think that the most important threshold to cross in public policy and in making sure the public has the accountability, transparency that it needs to see is to just open. Now, when this famous court did their, this was an earlier court, but it's only gotten worse since then, the Citizens United decision, good name, terrible decision. What they did was, usually the court will do something, you know this better than I. Dean, they'll do something and they'll say, now Congress, we don't think that what Congress did is constitutional, now go do something about it. But with this bill, because it was a different agenda at work, what they did was they shut every window. They shut every window so that you couldn't go back and change what their objection was to the law. They left one little window open. It was called disclose. Disclose is the process by which big dark money has to be open money. You must show where it's coming from. The Chamber of Commerce said, thank God we don't have to disclose. So we tried to pass it, but we got 59 votes. We didn't have 60 because we couldn't get one Republican vote. Not one Republican vote. Mitch McConnell said, I don't know what your problem is. The problem in politics is not too much money, it's not enough money. What? So maybe for you, but not for the American people. So if we could end that, it would end a lot of the cynicism that people have, I do believe, the skepticism they have about who are you there representing? What is my voice worth in all of this? If this guy's giving $1 billion and somebody did in the last, it's the price of doing business though. Fossil fuel, guns, pharma, you name it. And I try to work with it, well, not the guns because they just don't want to work, but work with some of the pharma people about why are you just making all this money? We passed a bill called IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, IRA, that took the cost of insulin from $500-600 a month to $35 a month for seniors on Medicare. Some people just couldn't even afford to take it, or they'd take it 1 month or cut it in half and all that. $500-600 a month. They're taking us to court on reducing the cost of prescription drugs. Now, I mean, the American people, this is why, I mean, what are we talking about here? But money, 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 money. And the Republicans have said, I don't think they think their name is an insult, so I'll use their name. The Republicans have said their agenda is to overturn all of that in the next election. So if you have a senior who is taking insulin, $500-600 until Joe Biden signed that bill, $35 a month. So it's really, it's wrong. It also is horrible in terms of what it does to people's faith in government and the rest. They think we're all in on it. And it's like, no, they're the ones. But nonetheless, the only thing we can do to correct that impression is to get rid of that. You need 51 votes to change the filibuster rule. If we can get 51 votes to change the filibuster rule, we could pass the protection of the voter. It stops, John Lewis wrote the first 300 pages of this bill. It stops the voter suppression. It stops partisan redistricting. It's by making it by commission and the rest. It discloses big dark money in politics. And as I said, Chamber of Commerce said, if our people had to disclose, they wouldn't give. They don't want their employees, their customers, their clients, their community to know how much money they're putting in to the guns and to the this and to the that. And so it says, and it honors small donors by having matching for small contributions, so people see that their vote and their participation is as good as anybody's. And the outside mobilization of politics, of getting out the vote, and that we would never pass the Affordable Care Act if we didn't have outside mobilization. We have to fight the bishops. I mean, you want to talk about a force. The bishops were against the Affordable Care Act. They said we were not honoring the Hyde Amendment. The people who wrote the Hyde Amendment were supporting the bill because it did honor the Hyde Amendment. I don't even like the Hyde Amendment, but it honored the Hyde Amendment. So the outside mobilization, when we did them, just because it comes back to what's the best way. Don't worry about what's happening internally. Let's worry about how outside can impact it. So when we did the Affordable Care Act, they said to me, we were on a roll, and then we lost Ted Kennedy, and then we lost his seat in Massachusetts. And they said, the press said, it's over for you, because then we didn't have 60 votes. It's over for you. So it's not going to be over for us. Because this is our opportunity. Is Dave Apollo here? There he is. He was such a hero in all of this. You know this so well, Dave. I didn't see you there. I didn't see you. He's a masterful legislator genius, really. And he was with us then, one of the committees of jurisdiction. So in any case, they said, it's over. And they said, well, how are you going to do this? I said, well, we're not giving up an opportunity of a lifetime to give millions of people access to health care. This is our thing. Martin Luther King said, of all the injustices, the injustice in healthcare is the most inhuman and unfair because people can die. Martin Luther King. We're not giving up that opportunity. So if anything stands in our way, we're going to push open the gate. If that doesn't work, we're going to climb the fence. If that doesn't work, we're going to pole vault in. If that doesn't work, we're going to helicopter in. But we're not letting anything stand in the way of our passing this legislation. After we passed it, they said, which one did you do? And I said, the first, because we had the votes, that was one thing, but we had the outside ground game. We owned the ground. Just push open that gate with all of the diagnosis groups, all the groups of children, little lobbyists, every diagnosis you could think of was there with us. And the nuns. Thank God for the nuns to counter the bishops. I mean, not all the bishops, but most of them. And the ones who were in charge. The saddest day for me, almost to tears, which would be completely unusual for me, was when they said, a person I've worked with for years on the Gospel of Matthew, when I was hungry, you fed me, when I was naked, you clothed me, when I was homeless, when I was in prison, you visited me. These people we worked with for years. This guy says to me, I've never seen the bishops so united as they are against the Affordable Care Act. Right? Okay, well, we have to defeat them too. And we did. We had people who had studied in the seminary and all the rest who were our votes because they knew what the bishops were saying wasn't true. So again, it's about the outside mobilization. The outside mobilization then saved the Affordable Care Act. We had 10,000 events, 10,000 events where people told their story. They didn't talk about the provisions of the bill, just told their story. My mother had cancer. My child was born with a heart condition. We had $1 million in bills the first year, but the Affordable Care Act did save them. Told their stories. The outside mobilization saved the bill from the grip of that person who was president for a while. And so it is, again, we are the people's house. It is about we the people. That's the Constitution. That's how it begins. And that's how we have to always keep thinking of it. So when you want to talk about how to do it better, talk about how people can be involved in it better. And that's a responsibility of the people who are in office too, to throw open those doors and make sure people can see what it is. And you know, if they're keeping a big dark secret, they're doing the work of the big dark money. So that's how I think you can do it better. Take more responsibility for it too, but demand this bill. If we can pass this bill, it will be the savior of democracy. Because right with it, we have the John Lewis, one bill he wrote, the other bill is named for him, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Imagine that they would not pass a Voting Rights Act. When I was not even speaker, but leader, we wrote the Voting Rights Act in a bipartisan way, 2006, became law in 2007, bipartisan, and we walked down the steps of the Capitol together in bipartisan. I think they had 100% vote in the Senate, and we had a few stragglers in the House that didn't vote for it. George Bush signed it. He took great pride in signing it. He came to Selma on the 50th anniversary of the March on Selma, and that was he was taking pride in signing that. And now they just won't even give us a hearing on. We just we can pass it in the House again and again when we had the majority, but 60 votes in the Senate, we couldn't even get one of them to go along with it. But we have to honor the values of our founders. They had a vision for this country that was like none other in the history of the world. I mean, the French will, I'm getting an award from the French, and they're saying, we, the country that created human rights and justice. And, you know, they're taking full credit for it. I mean, well, they were philosophically there, but we did it. Anyway, and that vision, and then the sacrifice of our men and women in uniform to protect that freedom, and the sacrifice their families make. Vision of our founders, the sacrifice of our men and women in uniform, and the aspirations of our children about the future. As you go into the election season, all elections are about the future. It's about the future. What does this mean for the future? And that is when I would normally go into a whole thing about why Joe Biden is such a great president of the United States and a president for the future, but I don't think that's allowed here.
So this has been extraordinary, and it's been just an incredible privilege to have this opportunity to talk with you. One final question. So first-year students,
Yes,
any
it's
final
first-year
advice
students.
as they're beginning their legal careers? Do you have any final
Yeah,
advice
I thought
to them?
that you were asking them for final thoughts. I was all ears. What some of us did in our day, and you can do better now because you have the technologies of communication and so much opportunity, is think differently about, now not different and incorrectly in the Apple ad, but think differently about what you want to see the future be. Think about the vision of our founders, skipping the bad things that we had to correct in the Constitution, but what we could do further. And always take it home to the person. What does this mean to the person? Well, I'll tell you what I think your opportunity is. I'm from Baltimore, well, 50 years in San Francisco, but I'm born and raised in Baltimore, you know, Italian-American, Catholic, patriotic, Democrat. The national anthem was written in Baltimore. I take great pride in it. Francis Scott Key at the War of 1812. And you know, when you're at the game and you come to the end, it's going to be the land of the free, home of the brave. When I do that, when it's proof through the night that our flag was still there, That is the challenge that we have now. Proof through the night that our flag was still there. We're in a night. We have to get through it in order to make sure that our flag is still there for the world to see, this beautiful flag that we take a pledge to every day in our civic lives, with liberty and justice for all. And that liberty and justice for all is about you. So how do you take the pledge that we take, the Constitution we take an oath to uphold, all of that to the person with liberty and justice, all, for all. And that's what our model will be to the world. And that is what we owe our founders, our men and women in uniform, and we certainly owe our children. So as you're thinking about how you go forward and whether you want to, as freshmen, make your decisions in classes and this or that, how does it do two things? Flag is still there, but also find areas of agreement. Find just what you might have in common. May not be of the highest priority at first, but you can get there. And when I talk to the members, especially when the members are starting to, when they want to leave or something, they'll say, I had hoped I could bring people together about this. I had hoped I could bring together people about this. Think about what you might want to bring people together. I mean, it's a rough scene out there right now, and there's things we have to defend, and so that makes differences. But you can't just do it without thinking what comes next. You are what comes next. You are the here and now, but you're also what comes next. And how do you think about this country, this great democracy? I mean, I'm just love it so much. And so grateful to the inspiration that brought us to what our founders had. But when you go around Washington, you see all of these statues and monuments and all to the past. And that's a good thing. We should honor that. But all of those people were about the future, about creating this country and then saving this country, with Lincoln saving this country. And so how are you making your contribution? Hopefully you won't be saving it, but you will be enhancing this country to strengthen liberty and justice for all. And until we really have liberty and justice for all, we're always going to have problems if people just don't understand why they are frightened of innovation, they're frightened of immigration, they're frightened of globalization, they're frightened of LGBT, they're frightened of women, they're frightened of diversity. No, embrace it. Embrace it. How do we take it? How do we take it forward in the spirit of our founders? Grateful to our military men and women in uniform and that. And remember that we are a model to the world. I'll just share one thing that I shared with the new speaker yesterday as I congratulated him. I said, I noticed that you mentioned Ronald Reagan in your comments. It's interesting. I said, but I want to make sure that you, a speech that I quote probably more than any other president is Ronald Reagan. Would you imagine? You heard me say Teddy Roosevelt, Ronald Reagan, Abraham Lincoln, 3 Republicans. I only mentioned Joe once. So I said, you have to read Ronald Reagan, and I promise you this will be the end. Ronald Reagan said this, and you Google it because it's much better said by him, the great communicator. He said this is the last speech I will make as President of the United States, and I want to communicate a message to a country I love. He goes on longer. to talk about the Statue of Liberty and beacon of hope it is to the world. And he talks about how America is preeminent in the world because America's door has always been open. And if we choose to close the door, he has a lot more in there. You have to, we're invigorated by all these newcomers and ideas, and this is America, a nation of immigrants. And then but if we choose to close that door, we will end being the preeminent nation in the world. But you have to read the whole speech and recognize that this is Ronald Reagan making that speech. Now, we are a nation of immigrants, and that constant reinvigoration has been a wonderful thing for our country. We have our challenges that we have to secure our border and this or that, but never forget who we are. Maybe you're blessed to be a Native American, and God bless you for that. That's a blessing to our country. But also that this is a country unlike any other that was founded on a principle of equality, that was just grown, developed, inspired, invigorated by newcomers coming to our country, and how we deal with the future in that regard. So very important. So you have a big responsibility. Know your power, be ready, know your why, know what and how. I hope that I did not discourage you from taking part in politics in my comments. It's worth the trouble. And prayerfully, a nun, Sister Joyce, I just saw her in LA, but years ago, she gave me this prayer. I love the nuns here. She gave me this prayer, and it was nailed on the wall of a hospital in Africa by a Presbyterian Black African bishop. It said, "When I die and happily go to meet my Creator, he will say to me, 'Show me your wounds.' And if I have no wounds, he will say, 'Was nothing worth fighting for.'" And that is really what it's about too sometimes. Sometimes it's a fight, but hopefully it can be a success. A vision with a plan, a brilliant future. Thank you for the opportunity.
Round of applause. So this is a lecture series that we're extraordinarily proud of. And Justice Ginsburg meant so much to all of us and was such a path breaker and such a fighter. And I can't think of a more powerful and perfect way to continue that tradition than to have this talk today and to give you this
Thank you.
as our speaker for the Justice Ginsburg series. Speaker Pelosi.
By Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Justice Ginsburg. I just say the last line, when we had her service in the Capitol, was such an honor. The song that was sung, the last words were something that I think you should all be inspired by and have as your words as well. America, America, I gave my best to you. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. To all of you. Thank you so much.
Speaker Pelosi. Thank you.